Okay, so the only thing that I think I missed was a 620 scan. And that, you sometimes don't even have to scan. It depends on your Hellion info. Okay, so the purpose of this build is uh, to to open up safely and it's a defensive build, and the goal of it is to survive and defend a good economy and develop the mech infrastructure that you want to play a long game. So the key parts of the build are getting a Raven, getting Hellions early on to scout and harass, getting there's a few key things that you have to build in the right order for everything to work out. You need to get your 3rd CC before your armories. Or I'm not sure about that. You need to get your turrets after your 3rd CC has started. That's pretty important. And you need to get your gases at your natural pretty early on. And you need to have tanks out by about 9.5, 10 minutes. Because that's when the medevac marine timings hit. Alright. So this is my TVT build that I do in most of my TVTs. I would say this matchup has the most variety of good different build orders. But this is my best one. Okay. Reactor, Hellion, Expand versus Terran. So, 10 depot, 12 barracks, 13 refinery, 15 orbital, 18 factory, 21 CC, 22 depot. Yeah. Two Hellions. Two Hellions. Starport and 3rd refinery. And it's actually this simple. Or second refinery, that is. It's this simple. There's no depots necessary because your CC finishes and puts you up to 35 supply. And puts you above 35 supply. Alright. So what you build out of your starport is dependent on your scouting information. So you get some info with the Hellions, and then at 620, this mule shouldn't be dropped. So that's, where does that fit in the build order? It fits. Fits right here. It's the 620 optional scan, and if you've scouted, if you've gotten into their base with your Hellions and you've seen exactly what they're doing, you don't need to scan. Or if you know the player and you know he's going to do a certain opening, you don't need to scan. Like if I was playing Nosy Neighbor and I know he does 1-1-1 aggressive openings, I would build a Viking instead of the Raven. But the purpose of this scan is to decide what to build out of the starport. Whether you want a Banshee, a Raven, or a Viking. Now, a Raven is the go-to because it starts accumulating energy, and that's value on its own without doing anything else. The Banshee is going to be oftentimes bad. It doesn't defend against Banshees very well, or, you know, I mean, the Banshee is a pretty limited unit in this build, because you're not going to get Cloak, and you're going to usually be on the defensive with this build. Alright, so you figure out what you want to build, and build it. Tech lab on the barracks. So this looks kind of complicated, and I suppose it is. The barracks builds every single add-on, which is a little bit funny. It builds 2 Marines, builds every single add-on, then goes and floats off for scouting. So, plus 2 factories. The last thing I need to look at is when I got the gases. At my natural. So it's right about here. Okay, that's the build order. Quite simple. It's actually not a simple build order, but once you get used to it, it's very logical. It's a good build. Anybody have questions about it? Did I cover kind of the important stuff? Like, that's just the skeleton build order. There's a lot of reactions that need to happen because you can be attacked. And it's definitely not an invulnerable build. You can't just play it in the dark because you'll lose to stuff. If your opponent goes for like a gas first Banshee and you build a Raven or a Banshee out of your starport, you'll lose straight up. And if your opponent does go for a Banshee on one base, you actually need to start making Marines out of your barracks and get a Viking and then a Raven. out of your starport, and you're still probably going to lose a couple SCVs, but you'll be up a base. Yeah, like, you surprisingly still can win games early, because even though it looks like a very passive build, and it is, with the early reactored Hellions, against somebody that goes, say, 1-rax expand into reactor Hellion, you can just kill them sometimes if they don't build a bunker, or if they 1-rax expand and tech up to starport. You can run past a bunker when you get to 6 Hellions. And it's also perfectly reasonable sometimes to build, after you get 6 Hellions, build a pair of Widow Mines, maybe even 4 Widow Mines. So yeah, that's the TVT build. Done and covered. I'll take questions now. Yes, Force, I am too technically incompetent to actually upload this myself. I'm going to Skype it to Force Water. He's going to edit this and put it on my YouTube channel, I hope. Very much I hope. And he'll probably attach the notepad as well. An early tank push. That's a good question. I have a great replay of myself defending it, but I can't play it because it is on an old patch. But against an early Marine tank push, that's the most dangerous thing to face. It's definitely a counter build. Fortunately, it's not something that can be done reactively. They can't see that you went Reactor Hellion expand and say a siege push is going to work, because instead of building a Raven, you can rush out siege mode, and that's not an unreasonable thing to do. Not even siege mode, just siege tanks. But the way to defend a siege push is actually to use your SCVs. The push is going to be most dangerous early on, before your second and third factory finish. But what you want to do is, at the right time, pull all your SCVs, use your 8 or 10 Hellions and 2 Marines, and you want your Hellions to target down their Marines, and you want to lay down a couple of auto turrets with your Raven. And if I scout this coming, if I scan and see tanks popping out, I think building a Banshee is reasonable. Banshees are pretty decent defensively against tanks. But it's difficult to defend, but it's doable. And that's not a one base siege push is, right now I don't see a lot of those. I just don't see a lot of those. Yeah, the way to counter a one-base siege push would be to get early siege mode of your own. Defensive siege tech counters aggressive siege tech. You'll just be up a base with tanks. And then you really want to focus on pumping out Vikings. Get that starport on a reactor ASAP and pump out Vikings. So what that build order would look like is, you get 4 or 6 Hellions and then your factory lifts off the reactor and lands on the second tech lab that your barracks built. The first one going to your starport for a Raven or a Viking. If you do scout, very important. If you scout, your opponent is on one base, you get a Viking and then a Raven. Every time. A Viking first is better against the medevac elevators, it's better against siege pushes, and it's better against Banshee openings. This is my build order that I use in most of my TVTs. It's a defensive build order, so the game, I win very rarely out of the opening, but that's not the purpose of the opening. The purpose is to just set up for a mech game. It's actually pretty tricky to open up into mech. Safely. Just because there's so many good aggressive Terran openings, you know? Like we've gone over. Gas first, there's Cloak Banshee, there's a really fast Hellion drop. You know, there's like 615 you can have Hellions dropping. There's the elevator. I think I mentioned Cloak Banshee. Those are the big three. And then like tier 2 openings are like a siege push, one base Widow Mine drop, there's a lot of stuff. There's probably some openings I'm not thinking of, some aggressive openings. But yeah. Yeah, Hellbat drops. A 1-base Hellbat drop. I think this will defend that just fine. You'll have 6 or 8 Hellions of your own, a Viking, and so you can ward off the medevac. You can afford to lose 5 or 6 SCVs, and you're base up, so you're still going to be ahead. Yeah, it's definitely a build that I think Masters are going to be able to handle a lot better than people below Masters. I don't want you from trying it out, but as far as builds go, this is kind of a high-level build. It's quite easy to misread some scouting info, or have your Vikings slightly out of position, or have your Hellions slightly out of position, and instantly lose. So it's I mean, definitely, like, it kind of toes the line of being able to defend all the different aggression Terran can do.